Today I will discuss the topic database management system. In this video I will explain all definitions related to the database management system and some terminologies that will use in further learning of database management system. These key terms and definition will help in the learning of database management system. This video is mainly focused about the basic concept and definitions and key terminologies that are used in database management system. In this video, first I will explain the introduction of database management system. What is DBMS? What is database? What is the view of database, major roles, all other topics. I will cover all some basic definition in this video. This is the introductory video. Okay, let's start from the introduction of the database. What is the database? Database and database technology are major impact on growing use of the computer. Because in the today's era computers and technologies are growing and the data is increasing day by day, and we have the large amount of the data, and for storing the data, fast retrieving the data from the database, we have required some technology, some term where we can store the data and we can efficiently retrieve the data, or we can perform the query from the data on the data. For that we have required some database where we can store the data and we can fetch the data. It is fair to say that database play crucial role in almost all area where computers are used, including business, electronic, commerce, engineering, medicine, genetic, law, education, library, science. Where there is the data, we have required some database for storing that data. If in all areas we have some data, and for managing that data we have required some database. That is the use of the database. A database is a collection of related data. What is database? A database is a collection of related data. The database stores the data that is related to each other. By data we mean fact that can be recorded and that have implicit meaning. What is the data? Data that is stored in the database, that is some fact and it has some implicit meaning. The data that we have stored in our database, it has some impact meaning. Okay, for example, consider the name, telephone number and address of the people you know. You may have record this data in indexed address book, or you may have stored in the hard drive using personal computer and software such as Microsoft Excel, Access Excel. This collection of related data with an implicit meaning is a database. The data that we have stored is data of a student, it has some implicit meaning. It has some features like name, telephone number, address of people, etc. It has some implicit meaning. The data, we cannot say any data any raw data that has no meaning. We don't say it's a database. The database is the collection of data, that related data that has some implicit meaning. I will say only those database who has stored the data with some implicit meaning. A common use of term database is usually more restricted, where when we can say that it is the database. A database represents some aspect of the real world. A database represents some aspect of real world, something called the mini world or universe of discover. Changes to mini world are reflected in the database. What is the database? It's called mini world. Mini world means if I have stored the data of my university, then my university is called the mini world, because in my university there are many roles. There is roles of professor, director, assistant professor, student, manager who is managing the database, technical team, and all other stuff. This is the mini world. I mean, we have stored the data of all the persons in the database. That's why we are saying that if I change the data of some student or data of any professor or anyone, then it will reflect in the database, and the changes in mini world are reflected in the database. In the real time, if I change something, that in mini world, my mini world is my university or my college. If I change the something related to the any person, then it will reflect in the database. That's why we call the some aspect of the real world the, to the database. A database is a typically coherent collection of data with some inherent meaning. A random assortment data cannot correctly be referred to as database. I have already told that any random assortment of data cannot correctly be referred to as database. It should have some inherent meaning. Okay. A database design built and populated with data for a specific purpose. The database that we have designed and stored in the database, it has it has populated with some specific purpose. We have stored in the data we have stored the data in the database with some specific purpose. Every database has some specific purpose. Let's If I have stored the data of all the student, then it has some specific purpose. We have stored the name, roll number, phone, mobile number, address, and all other features that can be relevant to any student in the database for our use. Okay, the database has some specific purpose. In other word, how can we define the database? A database has some source from which the data is derived, some degree of interaction with event in real world. Every data has some source from which database is derived, and degree of interaction means it's our database interact with the real world and audience that is actively interested in constants, and there is some audience that interacts with the database, and if there is some changes in environment, then it will reflect in the database. The end user of database may perform the business transaction. For example, a customer buy a camera, or event may happen. For example, an employee has a baby, that cause information in the database to change. The database that stores the data, we can perform some operation, transaction, and we can use according to us the data that is stored in the database. In order for a database to accurate and reliable at all time, it must be true reflection of mini world that represent. Therefore, change must be reflected in database as soon as possible. If there is some changes in the mini world, it should be changed in the database also. And if it's taking time, then it is not reliable and accurate database. And our database should change very fast. And okay, a database a database may be guaranteed and maintained manually, or it may be computerized. We can maintain the database like in our with the help of pen and paper, and we can record each and every employee or any person manually, and we can store the data like in Excel and another format. We can do both. For example, a library card. card catalog is a database that may created and manually maintained manually. Library card data, because this database is not much, that's why we can create and maintain it manually. A computerized database may created and maintained either by a group of application program written specific for that task, or by a database management system. Okay. We can create and manipulate the data manually, and by or we can create and manipulate by computerized. And for computerized database creation and manipulation, we have required some system that will do this task, that is called the database management system. This is the simple definition of the database management system. We are only concerned with computerized database in this book. Okay. We mainly discuss about the computerized database, not the database that is created and maintained manually, because that is simple, that any person can do. Our main focus is on computerized database. huh. DBMS. What is database management system? A database management system is a collection of programs that enable users to create and maintain a database. It is a collection of program. Database management system is collection of program that enables users to create and maintain a database. This is the collection of program. A database manage DBMS is a general purpose software system that facilitates the purpose of defining, constructing, manipulating, and sharing database among various user and applications. What is the DBMS? General purpose software. For what? Defining, constructing, manipulating, and sharing database. For performing this operation, this is the general purpose software. Okay. Defi- Defining a database involves specifying the data types, structure, and constraint of the data to be stored in the database. What is the definition? Defining means which type of data we are storing, its numeric, character, string, etc. And what is the structure? What are the constraints? What should be the maximum length of the phone number, maximum length of any name. These are the constraint. The all these terms that are used in defining database. The database definition or the descriptive information is also stored by the DBMS in the form of database catalog or dictionary. It is called the database, called metadata. What is the definition of the database? How we have stored our data? What are the constraints that we have applied for the storing the data? That all the information about the data that are stored in the database, that is called the metadata. Constructing. How to construct the database? Constructing the database is the process of storing the data on some storage medium that is controlled by the DBMS. That is called constructing. Manipulating. What is the manipulation? Manipulating a database includes the functions such as querying the database to retrieve specific data, updating the database to reflect the change in the mini world, and generating the report from the database. Manipulation means we have performing some querying and retrieving some data. Query means we perform some querying. I want the name and roll number of this student. I want to the location of this student for the any student database. I want the CGP of this student. This is performing querying and retrieving database. And we can if I want to the add some marks and some numbers of any student, that is called the updation. If I update some in mini world, then it will reflect in the database. Sharing, what is sharing? Sharing a database allow multiple user and program to access the database simultaneously. Simultaneously means we can share the database to many person, and many person can access the database simultaneously. That is called sharing. An application program accesses the database by sending query or request for the data to the DBMS. My DBMS is a software. Any software, we send a query to the software, and this DBMS will retrieve the data and perform the query in the database. This DBMS software will perform the query in the database. A query typically causes some data to be retrieved. What will be the query? The query could be typically some retrieving the database, and another type of query, a transaction may cause some data to be read and some data to be written in the database, and another type of query could be some reading writing in the database. Another third type of query protection includes system protection against the hardware software malfunction or the crisis, and security protection against the unauthorized and malicious access. Our DBMS provide the protection that include the in the case of some crisis, security protection against the unauthorized access, malicious access. We could write our own set of program to create and maintain the database. In effect, creating our own special purpose DBMS software. We can create our own DBMS software for all these performing all these query and operations. We maintaining, creating a database. To complete our initial definition, we will call the database and DBMS software together a database system. Together, database and database management system called database system. You can see the simplified database system environment. There is a user program that we are using. User program means any app that retrieve the data from the database. Application program query. If you are watching the video on any social media like Instagram, Facebook, you click on any video, then this video you are performing the query from the any application software. Application program means app, from any app. You will click on the video and you are sending the query to the database system. What will the data DBMS software do? Software to process query and program. That software will process your query that we have that you have sent. You have sent the query for the retrieving a video from the database. Software to access storage, and this software will access the storage where the data is stored. It will retrieve the data from the database and send to you. This is a simplified system environment. Most medium size and large size database include many types of record and have many relation among the records. Second, database manipulation involves the querying and updating. What is the database manipulation? Database manipulation means performing some query in the database and updating some database. Retrieve the transcript, a list of all courses and grade of Smith. This is what is this? This is querying. List the name of a student who took the section of database course offered in fall 2008 and their grades in that section. This is the another query. List the prerequisites of the database score courses. This is another query. What is the update? Example of update: change the class of Smith to Sophomore. Create new section for database course for this semester. These are the updates operation. Designing another thing. Designing of a new application for an existing database or design for a brand new database start with a phase called requirement specification and analysis. Yes, if you are creating a new application or the new database, then you will start from the requirement specification and analysis. First, what will you do? First, you will gather the requirement of the user. What is the requirement of the user? uh, you will retrieve all the requirement of the user, and then then create the database according to the user's requirement. First, what will you do? First, analyze the requirement. What is the specific requirement of the user? These requirements are documented in detail and transformed into a conceptual design that can be represented and manipulated using some computerized tools, so that it can easily maintained, modified, and transformed into database implementation. What is the meaning of this line? The requirement of the user that we have get from the user, we will document it first and transform into conceptual design. From the user's requirement, we will create some conceptual design that can be represented and manipulated using some computerized tools. This design can be represented and manipulated using some computerized tools, so that it can easily be maintained, modified, transformed into database implementation. This design can be easily maintained, modified, and transformed into database implementation by using of this design that we have created with the help of the user's requirement. This can be easily modified, transformed into database implementation. We can implement our database, we can create our database with the help of this design. We will introduce a model called entity relation model that is used for this purpose. In the ER diagram, we will create from the user's requirement, we will create the ER diagram and transform this ER diagram to the our real database. The design is then translated to a logical design. This design is translated to a logical design that can be expressed in a data model implementation in a commercial database management system. This is currently most popular approach of designing and implementing database using relational database management system. One of the most popular technique is relational database management system for this operation. The final stage is the physical design, during which further specifications are provided for storing and accessing the database. The database design is implemented, populated with actual data, and continuously maintained to reflect the state of mini world. Okay. Next topic is characteristics of database approach. What are the different approach of what are the characteristics of different approach of database? A number of characteristics distinguishes the database approach from the much older approaching of programming with file. In traditional file processing, for each user define and implement the file need for a specific software application as a programming the application. In the traditional approach, every user creates own file and define and implement that file. That was the headache of the traditional approach, file processing approach. In the file processing, what they do, they store the database in the files. They create different directories and files for the storing the database, and mm, defines every user defines and implement its own file. If he want to perform some operation, then he access the file and do this operation. That was a not efficient approach. For example, one user, the grade reporting office, may keep the file on a student and their grades, program to print a student transcript and to enter new grades, and implemented as the part of application. A second user, the accounting office, may keep the track of student fee and their payment, although both users interested in about the student. Each user maintains separate file. Each user maintains separate file and program to manipulate these files, because each requires some data not available from other files. Both the people has individual file, and changes in one file is not reflecting in another file. That is not efficient. That was not efficient in the file processing approach. This redundancy in defining and storing data result in wasted storage space and redundant effort to maintain common up-to-date data. In the database approach, a single directory maintains data that is defined once and accessed by various users. What was the in file processing? Every user that want to access the file, access those files and perform operation according to his. He can read, write, update, and that changes by the one people, and another change by the another people. That was the not efficient, and it takes it very much time and large storage. But in the database approach, a single directory maintains data that is defined once and accessed by various users. In database, the names or labels of data are defined once and used repeated by queries, transactions, and applications. We create one single directory and perform multiple access of the data, and multiple people can access the data and manipulate and update, read, write according to their use. The main characteristics of database approach versus file processing approach was self-describing nature of the database system. This database system was a self-describing nature of database. This database describes what he has stored. Insulation between program and data abstraction. A third characteristic is support of multiple view of data. I explained this database. We create single directory, but multiple user can access the database. It supports the multiple view of the data, sharing of data, and multi-user transaction processing. Simultaneously, more than many people can perform the transaction in the database. That was not in the file processing. That's why we use the database management system today, because it is efficient and fast for the transaction, multiple view, and insulation between program and data, and the self-describing of the database. That's why we use database management system. That was all about this